2 years ago. Yes, I said years ago because I've talked about this individual and how they've lied to you multiple times across the past 2 years, and yet everyone has continued to excuse every single mistake they've made. Everyone's continued to act as if they weren't lying to you, and also smearing other content creators' names or reviving dead drama that they'd already apologized for multiple years before so that they could get themselves some attention, and now in this situation in current day have continued to defend a group and made multiple excuses and justified themselves not supporting the victims against this group. And I'm getting ahead of myself. 2 years ago, I made a video about Camila Cuevas, an individual best known for creating Glitch Tale, an Undertale spin-off franchise that has garnered them 1.6 million subscribers. Yet in spite of that, in spite of the fact I've already made a video about them with Just a Robot, one that did really well and currently has 150,000 views, he's still asking me at gunpoint to promote the video. So, if you aren't aware of what I've already discussed about Camila Cuevas, check the link in the description. But if you are, but would like a brief recap, I've got you covered. In 2018, Hopeless Peaches was a smaller creator, a fan of Camila Cuevas, who then reached out and asked if they could make a collaborative art piece with Camila, to which Camila accepted, and after this art piece was finished, Camila would ask Peaches if they would be willing to allow them to sell this on a merch store. A question Peaches never responded to. Yet in spite of that, Camila would continue to sell this merch and had been selling it until up to 2020 as has been documented. Peaches at the time would call out Camila after people had told Peaches that other people had had the same experience with Camila in the past, saying they never agreed to Camila selling this, and also raising multiple other issues with Camila, some being accurate, some not being as accurate. Camila would expect them to apologize. And Peaches did. That's where the situation should have ended. Peaches said they were sorry, but in response, Camila would reply saying, "You misspelled sorry for lying about you selling posters and lying about you not crediting me," which is a stark difference to what they would say later when Peaches would apologize once again for this issue. But regardless, in the time where Peaches was apologizing to Camila, instead of Camila accepting these apologies, or at least just moving on from the situation because it wasn't really that serious, Camila would be shit-talking Peaches in private. Camila was noted describing Peaches as a pathological liar, saying they would sue anyone they disliked, and also that people shouldn't work with Peaches, actively driving people away from Peaches' work, and stating that they should instead commission better artists who were actually good people. This is something that wouldn't come to light until many years later. However, Peaches and Camila would agree to apologize. They would accept that both of them had made mistakes, that most of this was a petty misunderstanding, and honestly, that it wasn't really that serious, and it seemed to have ended there. That was until Hopeless Peaches in 2020 got involved in the Hopeless Peaches drama, a situation I once again have already covered on this channel over a year ago, which I will link in the description because I don't have the energy to revive that. But Prismmate Luke would make a video calling out Peaches. Within this video, he would label Peaches multiple things that weren't true, notably a suicide beta. And in response to that, Camila Cuevas would leave a comment reviving their drama with Peaches and treating it as if Peaches had never apologized, reviving this past drama and somehow driving Luke to make a second video featuring this story primarily. Now, ignoring the fact that this situation involved Prismmate Luke and Creepshow art, which, you know, I think speaks volumes about how reliable the sources are in the situation, Camila had no reason to revive this other than because she wanted to see Peaches burn and because she wanted attention. And honestly, it does seem that way because multiple screenshots have been out there that show Camila reveling in Peaches' transgressions and making it seem as if they were the real victim to Peaches when this shit had already been dealt with. But after Peaches would once again apologize to Camila for this situation, a third apology, Camila would respond saying, "No one is in a position to deny someone's apologies." As I mentioned, a massive difference from what they said in the past when they were argumentative in response to Peaches' apology. This is where I dived in headfirst and called out Camila for many of their mistakes. The shit talking in private, the fact they drove Peaches to make multiple apologies, the fact they'd revived this drama, and practically anything else you could imagine. And that is where I thought I would end my discussion of Camila. Regardless of minor mentions here and there, I didn't imagine myself ever making something primarily focused on Camila once again. But it would appear I'm a fucking idiot. And if you'd like to support this fucking idiot, you can subscribe to this YouTube channel. Click the button. I'd really appreciate it. I think the button's white now, not red. It's a weird change, but whatever. I'd appreciate if you could click it. Here I am, talking about Camila once again. That's because in recent years, Camila Cuevas has allowed known predators into her Discord server and continued to defend them, even going as far as to blame the victims who came out against them, instead of simply removing them from her Glitch Tale community, which harbored over 25,000 people in their Discord server. On October 14th, Camila would finally face their first wave of actual backlash. A Twitter user known as Crystal Flame would publish a thread alleging Camila Cuevas had allowed known predators into her server. They went as far as to say Camila had openly defended a group, allowing them to remain in her official Discord server in spite of the ramping claims and awareness around their action. The thread reads as follows: Camila Cuevas seems to care more about her public image than following her moral compass and doing the simple act of removing a group from her server. They continued to state that a notepad was created in 2020 that was provided to Camilla that documented the actions of an individual known herein as Ver, the alleged group in this situation. As the allegation goes, Ver had been speaking to multiple minors, some being as young as 14, mostly on Skype, where Ver would provide them sometimes explicit messages and sometimes request or receive explicit images, with Ver himself stating in 2019 to a user we'll discuss later known as Artie, who is also relevant to this situation, that one minor had a big crush on him, and that he used to do stuff with her too, later stating that it wasn't a joke and that he had participated in some form of relationship, with him stating he knew she was too young, but that at 16 she was the age of consent and stuff, which is the worst defense I've ever heard someone provide for their actions, but whatever, I guess. And this conversation seemed to imply explicit images had been shared. Ver would also be caught stating that he'd seen multiple members of the Glitch Tales female team, with him going as far as to describe one of the female's bodies, that individual supposedly being between 13 to 15 years of age. After these situations were brought up and brought to Camilla's attention, Camilla would downplay the severity of these situations, saying he'd changed from when he participated in these actions back in 2015, and that he stopped mentioning anything sexual to anybody. He regretted his actions and said what's done can't be undone. After more pressure was put on Camilla, Ver would be removed from the Discord server for a whole 5 months. However, once again, he was very quickly allowed back into the server by Camilla after Camilla would reach out to the victim and ask them for permission to allow him back in the server. This was obviously a mistake. Camilla would later respond after this allegation was brought up publicly, stating they weren't aware of Ver's actions and that when they learned of what Ver did, they were just as shocked as everyone else. They would also state in their response that the accuser had lied about Ver being unbanned, which seems to be a recurring trend with Camilla, claiming that everyone who calls her out is lying, and at this point it's become a tale as old as time. The boy who cried wolf. They supposedly told Ver in the 5 months that they were banned that they should seek professional help, and that he was only allowed in a private chat in the server with 25 of his close friends, never actually unbanned. And even though they state that he supposedly only had access to a chat with these friends and couldn't see the other chats in the server, there were still 10 minors in this conversation, according to screenshots we have in the chat, that Ver could still access and communicate with. As such, minors were still prone to be taken advantage of, and Camilla was completely aware of that in the time they allowed Ver back in the server. After these allegations continued to come out about Camilla, on October the 26th, she would post a paste bin addressing the allegations and officially announcing that Ver would be removed from the server. This post reads, "It sickens me to bring attention to this situation since it causes a lot of pain to a friend affected by it, but since people are planning on making videos, I'll make a statement." This final statement reads, "I wasn't going to address the false accusations involving me because I respect that there's a victim who has an awful time every time someone brings the situation to the spotlight again." Reading this paste bin, it seems almost intentional, the way they've distracted her larger audience who will only take a cursory glance at this situation and not read any further into it, stating that this accusation is false and being intentionally vague about what actually happened. They simply avoid discussing this situation as is, downplaying the severity of it to their audience. They continue in this post to state, "I did not defend a group and never supported his action," going as far as to state that this situation had been twisted out of context and stating the abuser had been banned and won't be associated with Glitchtail any further. This is a good step, but it's much too late. But as I mentioned previously, Ver was not the only alleged group in the server. There's also an individual I mentioned before, known as Artie. Artie is a Twitch streamer with 10,000 followers. In 2017, they would engage in a relationship with a 15 to 16-year-old while they were over 20 years old. According to the allegations, there were multiple other minors who were affected by this individual, and when they did an interview, they would admit to being involved in some of this disgusting activity.
Four minors while you were an adult. I was the only one who spoke up about it.
And I'm going to ask you about this, Artie, because I don't care whether they speak up or not, because you're here. Why?
Why did I do it?
Yep, that is the question.
I don't know, but my intention was not to hurt them.
But you admit that you were with 4 minors, Crystal included.
It wasn't really a relationship, and I was more pressured to be dating with them.
I mentioned a degenerate server that Artie operated, which is heavily detailed in this document that I will leave in the description. Artie took pleasure in having minors drop for her, talk to a 13-year-old about how good the minor's drive was, and just being a sick fuck in general. She really didn't want people knowing about this server either, instructing people to not talk about its existence, but of course she was eventually outed.
As I mentioned previously, a lot of the information in this document has either been removed or lacks a lot of context. So I'll leave it in the description and you can read it and give your own judgment on it.
You worry about like danger and stuff, there's nothing more dangerous than hanging around a literal
Mm.
It's not even a case where you can say, oh well, you know, lust overtook a little child. You've done this to multiple people.
Yeah.
Did you lie in this call about your actual age?
Yes.
What's your actual age?
23.
In response to these allegations, and people coming to Camilla saying that this person was minors, Camilla would state that the individual who was taking advantage of these minors was technically a child herself, and that her mental maturity doesn't exactly represent her age, as if that would justify sending explicit messages to, and requesting inappropriate images from, multiple minors. To state Camilla's responses have been lackluster at best would be a fucking joke. She's refused to take a strong stance against the list of degenerate actors within her server until she was given no option but to punish them when these situations became public and more individuals continued to cover the situation. She made any excuse under the sun she could before this situation came to the public to justify alleged predators' activities, and after this situation came to the public, she made any excuse possible to justify her inaction to punish them. Camilla actually stated to one party who came to her that both of the individuals were toxic and made mistakes. It's fucking comical that after this situation came to the public, Camilla said that she fully supported this victim. Obviously, before the situation was public, you looked for any excuse to justify blaming the victim in this situation and saying this was basically also their fault, even going as far as to tell them that they should talk out their issues with the person they're telling you took advantage of them. What kind of advice is that? Camilla has not once acknowledged the severity of this situation, stating in her tweet longer that they only invited a known predator back into their Discord server so that they could get a piece of their life back if they'd like to right their wrongs. As if someone like this would ever deserve that kind of kindness, especially after only 5 months. Camilla also blatantly lied in this apology multiple times. The first time lying about why they banned one of the victims from their server, stating that it was completely unrelated to the fact that had come to them about accusations about one of the staff members. This was confirmed by one of Camilla's moderators who would come out, stating that they were told to ban the victim because they accused Ver of multiple serious things, and another moderator would also confirm this verbally when they did an interview.
You know, I know the reason I was banned. You know that, as I can quote Blair, that I was banned for saying, and I quote, vile stuff about fear. That's the reason what we said in the mod chat. That's what Blair has said. Yes. And Cammy has stated publicly twice now that is not the reason. She is lying publicly with a massive audience to downplay everything I faced. So I'm happy that you can confirm that a moderator for Camilla can now confirm that that is true.
The second lie was them stating that the victims had Camilla's full support. For someone who claims that others are always lying about them, it kind of seems like in every situation they've been brought into, they're the liar. For years, Camilla in private would celebrate controversy surrounding Hopeless Peaches, and drove the knife deeper by reviving drama and claims that had either been apologized for or simply weren't true for the sake of garnering attention and making Peaches look worse, trying to ruin them permanently, which already seemed like Camilla's intent when their moderators would reach out to Peaches in the past saying they should delete all of their social media if they ever want to be forgiven by Camilla. Though I don't know how anyone can stand Camilla's shock and hurt now that the shoe's been put on the other foot. When Camilla found it appropriate to revive her issue with Peaches over 2 years after they were resolved, she didn't think twice. But now she's in the hot seat for harboring alleged predators in her community and blaming the victims for things that weren't their fault, stating that the creators who are discussing this situation are making absurd accusations that are causing more suffering to those that are trying to move forward. Ergo, her and her group of friends who want to avoid being criticized for their humiliating dishonesty. Camilla would later further refuse to do an interview with Hopeless Peaches to address this situation on call, stating that she wasn't fluent enough in English to be confident in it, which is pretty clear isn't true. And Camilla would later decline to speak with a Spanish translator about the situation because she was conveniently sick. I think it's very clear here that Camilla cares more about how she looks in this situation than standing up for real victims that she has silenced over and over, refusing to take any opportunity or olive branch she's been given to make herself look better or to acknowledge wrongdoing. Well, at least after all is said and done, Camilla acknowledged that these people were in the wrong and is no longer engaging with them. Okay, so she may have played League of Legends with one of the people involved on November the 1st, in spite of the fact she'd acknowledged that they were wrong by then and called them out for this behavior, but at least she's not laughing about what they did in private and how she's getting away with. Yeah, I think it's fair to say that the person who says they're just going to use their last video as bait and then delete it later when their drama settles down didn't learn anything and actually doesn't care about being honest about anything they've done, the other people they've been involved with who have done disgusting activity, and how they're being called out for it. Camilla just doesn't want the drama. With that being said, fuck off, Camila Cuevas. And this is where I originally planned to end this video. That was a day ago before Camila Cuevas released a response where she supposedly apologizes and I've been told isn't very honest about her involvement with the situation and the decisions she's made. Secondly, my channel might be at risk of termination. I made this same video and published it to YouTube yesterday. I think if you're watching this video, you'd acknowledge none of it violates the guidelines, but in spite of that, YouTube took it down while it was uploading before they even had a chance to see the contents of it when the file I uploaded was corrupted, so they couldn't have even reviewed the video for supposedly violating the guidelines. Honestly, the only explanation is that the MP4's file was too controversial for YouTube somehow, and as such they took it down in spite of the fact it was just keywords. This title wasn't controversial, and I can't stress this enough, every word within the title I've used multiple times over in the past, and they've never been taken down before. They all follow the written guidelines YouTube has, and I can't imagine anything I've done within this video that would get me striked. I did post a tweet about this that YouTube responded to, saying they're looking into this and understand my concern, which is really good to hear because I really don't want to be banned. But just in case anything goes wrong and I need you guys' help, please go check out my Twitter. As I said, it's linked in the description. Who knows if I'll even have this channel tomorrow? YouTube could make some secret policy change, or may have already, that means that this entire channel just gets taken down tomorrow, in spite of the fact that nothing I've ever done in this channel has ever come even close to something that's not on guidelines, something that's not allowed by YouTube in the past. So I really hope that doesn't happen. But in spite of that, I think we should talk about Camilla's response. Camila Cuevas' response reads, "I'm making this message to my community regarding a very delicate issue that has been happening this year. The reason I took this long to make it was because I'm having a very rough time with my family, and it's something that has deserved most of my attention this year. For my delay, I apologize. I also spoke to one of the victims in private yesterday and apologized to them properly for everything. And now with a more calm mind, I was encouraged to make an official statement here. I'm not looking for an excuse or an explanation. I just want to tell the truth behind my actions. To those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, the person I work with when creating parts of my story for animations has been exposed for taking advantage of multiple minors some years ago. I was oblivious to this fact and to how disgusting it all was until last year. When I learned about it, I took action and removed him entirely from my community. Sometime later, I had been told by one of the people he lived with that he had attempted against his life. This shook me to the core. It made me feel guilty and responsible for it. He kept saying how I'm basically the only reason he was alive and how nothing had meaning anymore, now that he wasn't able to interact with anyone, and with how depressed and miserable he was, I felt obligated to do something about it, and I made a mistake. In pity, I allowed him back into my chat where some close to our friends were, something I shouldn't have done. I know this made some of the victims feel like I didn't care about them, and I deeply apologize for that. I acted out of fear because I legitimately thought he'd make another attempt at his life if I couldn't do something to make him feel better. At this point, I still thought he was the good friend I made him out to be. I allowed my emotions to get the best of me, and I have no excuse for that. It wasn't until a few days ago that I realized how little I mattered to him. I thought that since he knew my mistake stemmed from trying to help him, the situation would at least prompt him to come out and say the truth. That he's the one responsible for all these acts, that he's been emotionally manipulating me and just hiding behind me so that I'd receive all the bullets for him. But that never happened. I thought he'd come out and own up to it, but he allowed this to fester and stayed radio silent, fully knowing how complicated my situation in real life is right now, and fully knowing how much this was affecting me physically and emotionally. I took too long to realize that this isn't what a friend would do, and it took me longer to accept that he wasn't one. For that, I also apologize. To anyone who's upset with my actions, it was never my intention to hide this or shove it under the rug, much less enable or allow it to happen. I was just scared for the life of someone I thought was my best friend. I was frustrated and upset when videos started to come up and made me say things I shouldn't have said. Back when Crystal brought it up, I failed to grasp how serious this situation was, and it wasn't until a close friend of mine gave me more details about what had happened that I realized how disgusting his actions were. I'm not looking for pity, just a little understanding, and that I didn't intend to act ill-intended to anyone. This year as a whole has been incredibly difficult for me in real life, and it's heavily affected my decision making. I know that being the head of an entire community is a big responsibility that I wasn't trained for, but I know people expect better from me and to be and act better. For those disappointed, I also apologize. I hope I can make it up to everyone in the future and take this this is a learning experience for those who can't. I made mistakes and they took me too long to realize for myself, putting others at risk. I'm just here to own up to them and properly apologize because I know that it means a lot to those who are affected by it. Even in more recent screenshots of a private chat I was having with my friends that were leaked where I made comments, I was doing them out of frustration and trying to pretend I was doing it all for a friend that just wasn't there for me. These comments don't reflect my current intentions and I also apologize for them. As of now, Vera is no longer in my life, nor is he associated with me and my work anymore in any way. I still need some time to dedicate to my family at the moment, and I'll do that for now. Thanks for giving me your time by reading this. I'll do better, I promise. Frankly, I feel no reason to really comment on this. No one can really attest to the validity of this apology, and personally, I don't really know what's going on in Camilla's life, so I can't comment on the sincerity of what she's saying. With the information I have provided to me, I can just say that I expect her to do better and hope she has actually learned from this situation. If you're new to my channel and haven't seen this Ray plushie before, I'd appreciate if you could subscribe. Really trying to reach 10 subscribers by next week would be highly appreciated. And I'd appreciate if you could check out my Twitter because it seems like every day someone has an issue with YouTube and this platform makes some kind of mistake. So I'd really appreciate having another platform so that I can contact you guys and communicate with you guys if something goes wrong. Link in the description at HarleyTBS YT would be highly appreciated if you could follow me over there. With that being said, I'll see you next time. Stay away from Discord servers and peace.
Says she wanna rock with it like me. I'm a stylish guy. Spend a little guap with it like me. We can catch a fly. Says she wanna rock with it like me.